What's up, Copy Squad? It's your boy Kyle Milligan of CopySquad.net, and today I'm going to run you through 4 things that I look for when hiring a new copywriter. And the way that I want to approach this, before I get to the 4 things that I'm looking for, I want to sort of do like a red flag, yellow flag, and then green flag approach. Red, yellow, green. Red being like, no way, not hiring this person. Yellow being like, well, this could be a little bit iffy, it might hurt your chances. And then green is going to be the things that you can do to really boost your chances of getting your foot in the door as a copywriter as a career path or as a job. Okay, so the first thing, let's look at the red flags. And I'll sort of label this, don't be a chump. That's like the first red flag that I look for. What do I mean by being a chump? It really sort of starts with like your attitude. I think attitude is like that singular thing, and that separates people who just kind of win and people who just continually lose. And because there's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy when it comes to attitude, and being a chump is sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Winners will win and losers will continue to lose. Chumps are going to continue to lose. So what are sort of like the behaviors of a chump? The first thing, like I say, is general attitude. If you're a person who makes excuses, so you can see this in different ways in the application process. Like, I couldn't fill this part out, or I'm going to be late because of this, or I don't know if this, like, basically having all sorts of excuses during an application process before I've even put you to an actual task. So part of the application process is I'm going to actually request like a sample, or not a sample that you've already written. I'm going to give you like an assignment so that I can see you go to work. And if you're already making excuses day one about the simple writing assignment I gave you, red flag, you're a chump. Get out. That's it. It's the end of that. The other thing that I look for is, like, during the application process, there are people who think they've already made it and they're already too good to go through a writing sample or to properly fill out the application or show up to meetings on time or interviews, because I go through a couple different phases of the interview process to ask you different types of questions. That's chump-like behavior. There's a couple other things that are really important. One is follow through. This is something that immediately gets you written off by me, which is if you request like a job or you want my time, I'm going to pay you all this money for this much of your time, okay? And then I say, well, you don't have to actually pay me that money. You can get on a weekly call with me if you like join the Copy Squad Inner Circle. But then you don't join the Copy Squad Inner Circle. Or you say like, I will be the best copywriter for you. I'm going to write for you. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And then I say, hey man, are you available for an interview this week? And then you go dark. You ghost. I just take that as chump-like behavior. The job of being a copywriter is difficult, challenging, and you're going to have a lot of hurdles, obstacles, and setbacks. Honestly, the things that I've just named eliminate like 90% of applicants before we even get to the tangible, tactical stuff. So this is a big red flag. The last one I've got for you is, it comes back to that excuses thing. If you find yourself seeking out conflict in a way where you're sort of placing blame on your external world, that you're a victim in the reality that you've built, like the reason you haven't had success is because of this thing and that thing and that thing and that thing, like those are red flags. That's a chump attitude. You're not a victim. You create and manifest your reality, okay? And you've got to have that sort of ownership, that agency, because again, as a copywriter, when you're working for clients, especially big publishing houses, big companies where you've got a marketing department, a design department, you got the copy chief, and then ultimately you got the publisher overseeing all that, and you got to satisfy all these people. You have to learn how to think on your feet and make stuff happen. So now from there, I want to move, that's the red flags. I'm going to move on to the yellow flags. What are the things that sort of set you back? I think the yellow flags are probably the trickiest. The yellow flags are actually all the things that you think you need to get hired as a copywriter. These things actually are hurdles. They're a little bit of mud in your trail. Like, they sort of sink you in, they slow you down. They actually don't help you as much as you think. I think they set you back a step. Here's what yellow flags are to me. First and foremost, experience. Because honest to goodness, I've been around the block. I've worked with a lot of different people who have been freelancers, people who have worked with other publishers, people who have worked with other chiefs. And honestly, when I see experience, your experience probably sucks. And I've got to unlearn you a lot of bad habits and baggage. So one of the things I'm actually not looking for when I'm trying to hire a new copywriter is experience. I'm first looking at that attitude, like how easy are you to work with? It's all going to come back to that, because generally with experience comes a shift in attitude that I've got this. And the way that we operate in my agency, and most people do, is they have a process, they have a method, they have a system. And if everyone's on the same page, then that system works like a well-oiled machine. And if you come in with all your experience and your wisdom and you know better than everybody else, i.e. attitude problem right there, right? that becomes an issue for our system. That becomes an issue for our methodology. So I actually try to tend towards the greener type of copywriters with the higher level attitude, because I can install the experience that I wish to install in them. Okay, so right in that whole vector, hits. The second thing, that's a yellow flag for me. Prior hits. Prior hits, meaning like you have had a successful promo in the past, because there's a lot of obfuscation, a lot of murkiness. I've seen people like claiming these massive numbers like on LinkedIn, and they'll reach out to me or something, and then I'll call around and I'll find out, oh, they're not responsible for those numbers, or they didn't actually contribute that, or they had a lot of help, and they're talking a big game, but they are actually limping across the finish line, and someone had to basically finish the work for them. This is these hits, when people are flashing their numbers and the hits that they've done. Were they good to work with? Were they difficult? Did they start a lot of fights with legal? Did they start fights with everybody? You know, these sorts of things. Again, with hits also comes ego. So when I see someone like bragging about their big hits when they walk in the door, again, if they don't come in with that humility, they come in with that bad attitude, Same thing. This is kind of scaling back from the big picture experience to big hits. The next thing I'm going to talk about is portfolio. You're writing samples. This is a yellow flag. Let me tell you two things. One, portfolios are mostly bullshit. Okay, and here's what I mean by that. One of my mentors, Joe Schrieffer, gave me a good lesson one time when I was calling around just like I usually do. Hey, so-and-so reached out and said, you know, they want to work for me. What do you think about this guy? And, you know, he says what he says, and I say, well, I don't know, he says he wrote this thing, and it's like, he says, let me tell you about something. We weren't talking about that writer anymore. He was giving me a lesson. He said, let me tell you about something. You probably don't know how many people are out there in the world claiming that they wrote a promo that I did 50%, 90% of the work on. And I know from experience, because I've been in that boat where I've had a copy chief rip my copy to shreds. And that's a very useful learning experience, but I've also been in publishing houses where I've watched other writers basically never really get to a point where they could write on their own. And it's always some guerrilla copy chief. I call it guerrilla, like the 800-pound gorilla in the publishing houses, rewriting all of their work. And then I'll call around to some other marketing director or some other publisher, and I'll say, hey, what about this guy? And they'll say, yeah, you know, they worked together, like he had a partner on this, and they both messed it up atrociously. Copy chief rewrote it, and we fired them. That's why they're looking for work. And, you know, meanwhile, they're calling me up like, hey, you gotta see my portfolio. I wrote this monster hit. I've got all this experience. These are yellow flags to me now, having been in the game for a while, because, you know, like one of my mentors said, like, do you have any idea how many people, because I've hired so many people, I've hired hundreds of writers or something, do you have any idea how many are out there in the world displaying their portfolio as if it's their own, when either me or a copy chief or someone rewrote, you know, 90% of that work? So again, a yellow flag for me. I don't care about your portfolio. It's probably bullshit. The last thing is good writing ability, the ability to write well. I actually don't like people who have very flowery prose, who are very purple and descriptive and colorful. I have to unlearn all of this crap for them as well. If you can't get to what's in it for me in the first 4 lines because you're like telling and painting this picture and this big elaborate story, you're gonna piss me off. Like, I want to know what's in it for me, and I want you to tell me at a 3rd grade reading level. If there's 3 adverbs in every single sentence, and there's a duplicate, there's 2 commas, if there's dual commas, like you have a stanza and then a comma and then a stanza and then a comma and then you complete the thought, that's not good copy. Good writers. So those are my yellow flags. Let's get into the green flags. What are the 4 things that I do look for in a copywriter? I mean, obviously, a good attitude is one of them, but I'm going to go beyond that here. So what are the attributes that I really like about a good copywriter that I can help? The first one is curiosity. Curiosity is important because as a copywriter, your job is to basically come up with new ideas. You're trying to come up with connections in the world that people have not yet made, or ideas that they have not yet heard. All right? So what's really cool about the job of being a copywriter is you get to come up with stuff that your friends would be like, oh, this guy again. Well, if your friends do that to you, if your friends be like, oh, what's he on about? Oh, what's he talking about now? Like, that would make you a good copywriter. If you come up with like these weird sort of like quirky ideas, unexpected ideas, connections in the world that other people haven't drawn for themselves, and you get into that and you dive deep, you are primed to be a good copywriter. Most people are surface level, so they roll their eyes at you. Oh, what's he going to talk about now? It's been going on for 45 minutes. Well, that sounds like a promo to me. You can sit there and rant and rave about some connection that you drew that no one else could see in the universe for 45 minutes. Most copywriters are kind of quirky like that. They're a little bit of an oddball group, but that's because their minds think differently. So they are de facto, by default, they're oddballs because they're not like normal people. They're thinking outside of the box. So curiosity is super important. I've got to see that you have a lot of interests. Second, follows instructions. Follows instructions is a demonstration of that humility and attitude that I've been talking about. You understand and respect that I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm talking about. That's really important, is have that level of respect that, look, I have to learn you something. So whenever I'm trying to learn you something, if you're arguing with me, if you're pushing back, if you're not following instructions, then you don't respect that I have the knowledge that I'm trying to help share with you. You don't respect that I have the experience to get you to a new level. So following instructions, understanding that there's a reason for the things that we do, and following that guidance without pushback, without argument, following instructions is very important. And this comes back to another thing that's really important to me, is the do the least principle. So I'm a big fan of this phrase that I use all the time, do the least. So whenever I tell you to do something, for instance, I want you to sort of mimic this structure. I want you to sort of embody what this promo over here did, or how we wrote this email before. And if you come back to me with, I gave you a 5-line email, you come back to me with a 15-line email, you didn't follow instructions. Now, I can either sit here and try to explain to you again, or I can scrap all the work that you did not to do it myself, and I could have just done it myself the first time. First thing was be curious. Second thing, someone who follows instructions. Third thing, long-term greedy. Someone who's long-term greedy. There's a lot of people out there who are short-term greedy. They're thinking about their next check. They're thinking about their next royalty payment. They're worried about what happens this next month. They're not thinking what it means, what their actions today mean a year from now if they were to think on this track and continue to compound these sorts of actions. I should be giving you like more book ideas. So for this, let's talk about Atomic Habits. The book Atomic Habits, I think, is the one where I read that if you repeat this action, just pick an action, whatever you're doing. If I repeat this endlessly for like 8 years, what will happen to me, right? Because that stuff compounds. You need to be thinking about that at all times. So if you're underhanded, if you're underhanded in the way that you deal with the people at the office, if you're underhanded in the way that you write copy that it offends or if it betrays your readers and customers, or you do sleight of hand in such a way that they feel like they got bait and switched, if you do stuff like this, you got to think, if I compound that behavior for 8 years, what happens? No customers, no coworkers, because they all hate me. Like, these kinds of things add up over time. Instead, you got to think long-term greedy. You got to not be trading up. I see people all the time talk about, oh, if you leave your job and go get another job, you can make more money. Yeah, well, you do that 2 or 3 times, I'll never hire you. You got a track record for working 3 months per a publisher? No way. That's not a long-term greedy person. It's someone I can invest in, because that person will either betray my trust, or they'll bail on me in a moment of need. They're too concerned about getting short-term profits now and a higher salary. I don't encourage that behavior. I think it's bad. I think it's destructive to the business, and it's destructive to your reputation. Don't do that. So the other thing about being long-term greedy is about the work itself, okay? Copy is a language. And so you have to think that this is a craft that I want to dive into and I want to master, as if I were learning a brand new language. And so it's kind of boring. And what I mean by that is the work itself can become tedious, and it can become repetitive, and that is part of learning a language. Part of learning a language, mastering a craft, is repeating the foundational, fundamental skills over and over and over and over. The last thing I look for, and this is kind of a hard one to sort of find in an interview, but it comes back to that attitude thing. You have to be a bit of a masochist. I can kind of dig this out in an interview. Are you a masochist? And what I mean by that is, are you sort of a glutton for punishment when it comes to your craft? Because back to that attitude thing. The attitude will ruin everything. That's why it's such a big red flag. It'll soil everything. As a copy chief, it's my job to absolutely sharpen your copy. That's my role. My role is to take whatever you send me and make it the best it could possibly be. And that means telling you a lot of things are wrong in it, destroying a lot of the work that you've created, and then rewriting some of the stuff that might have been your darlings, eliminating them or improving upon them in a way that, might be, it might feel like I did all this and now it's gone. Okay? You have to embrace that sort of evolution, that shedding of skin, because it is my job to make you better. And so I have to point out your flaws. Something I say inside the Copy Squad inner circle, something that I say inside my agency, something I say with anybody I'm working with at any level. I'm not critiquing you as a person. I'm not critiquing you as a writer specifically. I'm critiquing this copy. So that's the 4 things that I look for when hiring a new copywriter. I hope this sort of opens your eyes and gives you like a new perspective, because a lot of the misinformation out there is about just gathering like an portfolio and getting a bunch of clients so that you can get more clients. And that's not the way that I hire, not the way a lot of other copy chiefs and publishers hire. It's about those attributes, baby. It's about that attitude. I hope you took something away from this. Thanks so much for tuning in, and peace out, Copy Squad.